In 1987, the Soviet Union sought behind a multi-billion-dollar air defense grid. Thousands of radar installations, surface-to-air missile batteries, and interceptor bases were linked together with a single mandate: detect and vaporize Western bombers before they could cross the border. On May 28, 1987, a teenager in a rented civilian plane navigated through this system and landed in the center of Moscow. The defense network was humiliated by a small propeller aircraft that evaded detection for over 500 miles. Welcome to the channel, where we break down complex geopolitical events and historical anomalies into 5-minute explainers. The pilot was Mathias Rust, a 19-year-old West German amateur with barely 50 hours of flight time. Driven by the hope of building an imaginary bridge between East and West, he set out to navigate a small propeller plane through the Iron Curtain to foster a dialogue for peace. Rust's flight functioned as a stress test for Soviet military readiness. It forced a system designed for total war to handle an unarmed civilian, exposing the internal friction and fragility of the state. To make this work, Rust had to disappear. Shortly after taking off from Helsinki-Malmi Airport in Finland, he executed his evasion tactics. He switched off his radio, deactivated his tracking transponder, and dropped altitude to roughly 1,000 feet to slip beneath the gaze of primary radar. Rust officially filed a flight plan to Stockholm, Sweden, as a decoy, but over the Finnish town of Numela, he turned 180 degrees straight for the Soviet border. Soviet air defense radar detected Rust crossing the Estonian coast, assigning him combat tracking number 8255. He was saved by a cascade of bureaucratic accidents. Because of a domestic aircraft crash the previous day, some radar operators assumed this new blip was a friendly search helicopter. Furthermore, it was Border Guards Day in the USSR, and distracted regional commands failed to coordinate data across district lines. These overlapping errors reveal a structural blind spot. The Soviet defense grid was built to calculate the trajectories of high-speed nuclear threats. Confronted with a slow, low-altitude anomaly that didn't fit their profiles, the system simply failed to categorize him as a threat. Eventually, the military did attempt a physical intercept. Near the city of Gdov, a high-speed MiG-23 interceptor was scrambled to investigate the unidentified blip. When the Soviet pilot found the Cessna, he faced a severe aerodynamic mismatch. The MiG-23 was built for supersonic combat. To fly slow enough without stalling, the pilot dropped his landing gear and deployed wing flaps, barely maintaining flight next to the small plane. The MiG pilot was close enough to see the Cessna's white paint job, but he couldn't speak to Rust. The fighter jet was equipped with a high-frequency military radio, which was completely incompatible with the standard civilian avionics in the Cessna. The MiG pilot requested permission to engage, but the high command hesitated. Traumatized by the global backlash after shooting down Korean Airlines Flight 007 4 years earlier, Ground Control refused to authorize a strike against an unarmed civilian aircraft without orders from the top. Those orders never came. Left unchallenged, Rust pressed on. At 7 p.m., he arrived in the airspace over central Moscow. He circled the Kremlin, descended toward the street, and landed on the Bolshoi-Moskvoretsky Bridge. He taxied his plane to the edge of Red Square and met stunned onlookers before the KGB finally moved in to arrest him. The Soviet defense grid didn't fail mechanically. The radar and the interceptors functioned as designed. The failure was a breakdown in command. A rigid, fear-based hierarchy punished independent decision-making, paralyzing the military at the moment they needed to act. The global reaction was immediate. In the eyes of the West, the myth of Soviet military invincibility was shattered by a single teenager. Inside the Kremlin, Mikhail Gorbachev was dealing with severe political gridlock. His reformist agenda of restructuring and openness was being blocked by a conservative military establishment that refused to compromise. Gorbachev used the embarrassment of the landing as political cover. As shown in this report on Soviet civil-military relations, the incident allowed him to launch a radical restructuring of the military, providing civilian institutions greater access to military decision-making and devaluing the high command's role in foreign affairs. Gorbachev followed these institutional changes with a massive personnel purge. He dismissed Defense Minister Sergei Sokolov, the commander of the Air Defense Forces, and over 150 senior officers. This was the largest turnover of military leadership since the Stalin era. By hollowing out the conservative old guard, Gorbachev removed the military's political veto power. This cleared the way for him to sign arms control treaties with the West, scale back military spending, and allow the eventual collapse of communist power across Eastern Europe. Mathias Rust set out to build a symbolic bridge for peace, but his aircraft acted as a political wrecking ball. It exposed the rot within the Soviet military machine and triggered the shockwaves that led to its collapse. If you want to see more breakdowns of how small details change world history, make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.